Happy Tuesday, everyone, and welcome to our first ever episode. First ever. Fixed Tuesday at Automox. Now, we threw this podcast together to just discuss Microsoft's latest Patch Tuesday release, kind of go over vulnerabilities that we found interesting and have a little discussion about those. My name is Tom Bowyer, and I'm the Director of Security at Automox, and there's one more with me, and I'll let him introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Jason Kikta, and I'm the CISO here at Automox, and really excited to be starting this off with Tom.
Super excited. So November is actually pretty light on vulnerabilities this time, but there are a couple worth discussing.
Novembers that are light on vulnerabilities, they always make me paranoid because I assume it's just the calm before the storm because they just want to really wreck the holidays. It's it's one of those things that you want to take it at face value, but just that natural security paranoia always makes you wonder, okay, well, what's coming next?
Right. Who's ruining Christmas this year, right?
Yeah.
Is it Microsoft? Is it Cisco? Who's going to ruin Christmas?
So many quality candidates for the holiday destruction, Operation Deny Christmas that it's hard to pick a favorite, but someone will figure it out.
Yeah. If the threat actors could just take a break for those couple weeks, that'd be much appreciated for.
So this first one here is Smart Screen, Tom.
Smart Screen, another bypass feature, security bypass in Smart Screen. It's almost a year to the day of the last bypass in Smart Screen, and obviously this to me feels very nation state-ish, right? For those that don't know what Smart Screen is, it's basically a reputation-based system in Windows Defender that if you run some kind of weird binary, typically on your desktop, a little pop-up comes up that says this is not very safe. And are you sure you want to run this? Right? Obviously, lots of people pick yes, but a bypass there is quite interesting because, fun fact, if you sign your binary with an EV certificate, like an EV code signing certificate, it automatically bypasses or gains full reputation in Windows. So
this is the kind of thing that threat actors live for, and especially state-sponsored ones. They really enjoy things that bypassing security mechanisms is nice. Leveraging a security mechanism to do your dirty work for you is even better because you appear normal to the system and you escape a lot of scrutiny. You don't get logged, or if you get logged, you look innocuous and normal, or even a security positive rather than a negative. So nothing but goodness for them there. I think another interesting aspect of this is, this shows the danger of transitory assumptions because, starting with the EV certificates themselves, certificate signing authorities were never meant to provide a certain level of assurance that the assurance is that domain belongs to that certificate provider. It doesn't do a lot of assurance about the identity. EV certificates were meant to overcome some of that by requiring paperwork, but what people didn't consider is what a major US or British certificate authority can do in terms of verification and validation for a major corporation does not extend down to smaller certificate authorities that have less resources in developing parts of the world, writing certificates for at scale for a number of companies who have stuff in cloud providers. There's a lot of challenges there of just scale and scope that made it so that in order to keep issuing EV certificates, they kept having to water down the standards, and eventually got to the point where EV certificates became more dangerous in many ways than regular certificates. And then to Microsoft making what was probably a good faith decision that, hey, these are inherently more trustworthy at the time. when they were rolled out, that, we will, not let it slow down this security check. Probably a reasonable decision, but it was, some of this transitory decision making of, they're doing this level of diligence, therefore this is safe, therefore it can bypass the security check. Then that level of diligence changed, but that bypass didn't change, and it never got circled back to get repaired until it became a problem. And this one is a problem because it's on the CISA KEV. It's on the known exploited vulnerability database that CISA maintains for the U.S. government. And they, in order for something to get on that list, that means they have to see ongoing exploitation in the wild. And like you pointed out, it is most likely a state actor. So definitely concerning, definitely something that needs to be patched and addressed. And hopefully, anyone impacted by this will give it the due attention and make sure it gets fixed right away.
Yeah, agreed. So, get it fixed. It seems very scary. So I would say prioritize this one, I think, over all the other ones from this release.
Hey Siri, stop. When you know it, right in the middle of recording this.
So moving on to my probably favorite one. I'm always a big fan, if you could be a fan, of the breakouts, the hypervisor breakouts, and this patch Tuesday came with one. 2023 36400, which is a Hyper-V breakout. And it, we trust our hypervisors to be safe. And I feel like any breakout is going to be kind of big news. And this one in particular, I find it to be quite interesting, right? Low privilege guest on the hypervisor, just a whatever OS running. Obviously, as an attacker, I got to get on there first, but having a binary that can break out into the system is absolutely incredible. I find it.
Yeah, I think that, for a little bit of context here, it's important to understand that what's changed, and there's really been two trends driving the increase in interest in hypervisor breakouts. And the first is, obviously increased use of hypervisors, right? We use a lot more virtualization than we did even 5 years ago, let alone 10 years ago. So it's somewhat ubiquitous in most corporate environments. The second thing is that privilege escalation used to be a very bread and butter technique, and people paid less attention to it on the security side of things because they were more worried about those initial entry vectors and trying to shut those down. And those ought to be the priority, but there's a lot of ways around that. It could be as simple as phishing. And so once they're on, escalating privilege is extremely important to be able to either exploit that box individually or move laterally within the network. And there as a result has been a lot of hardening around privilege escalation. There's been increased and improved detection around privilege escalation. And so those two factors together have driven threat actors, both the state and criminal, to looking more at hypervisor breakout, right? It's instant privilege escalation because you're coming in as the hypervisor itself, essentially as the underlying hardware. And it's also, it doesn't force you to deal with all those new safety checks and guards and detections around privilege escalation. So extremely valuable as a class of vulnerability. And this one happens to be for Hyper-V, but as a class, this is where the real sweet spot is in current exploitation techniques. And and the other thing is to keep in mind is that when you see a vulnerability like this and a patch for it, actors will take a close look at that if this wasn't their technique, especially to see if they can extrapolate something from this to use on a competitor hypervisor, see if that technique will work. So don't be surprised if in a few weeks we see similar patches from other hypervisor vendors, guarding against it if the specifics line up.
Yeah, exactly. And to me, it's like, when people think about hypervisor breakouts, they think of cloud environments, Azure, AWS, Google, right? But this one in particular feels very much like I'm running a large scale internal network of assets, right? Because in the cloud, you don't necessarily know who your neighbors are per se, but breaking out there, although dangerous, you're not necessarily targeting another customer, right? But if I'm already in the network and I have a breakout to the hypervisor, right, there could be just a low privilege host running on the same hypervisor as like your domain controller, right? So instant access, right? Take a snapshot, turn it on somewhere else, then I'm in there.
Right. You may have this running as a some sandbox testing environment for customers, or a demo environment that maybe has no real important data on it. It's very low privilege, but the breakout allows them to either move into a more important system on the same, under the same hypervisor, move into that other more important virtual machine, or maybe a virtual machine that's not also not important, or maybe a virtual machine that's not also important itself, but has the necessary clues to be able to move laterally within that network and get into that management plane so you can get over to the systems that are really critical. So, several different paths to danger there, which is why this is something that we wanted to highlight for everyone.
Yeah.
So another one that we want to talk about is CVE 2023-36422. And this is a privilege escalation vulnerability in Microsoft Windows Defender. The CVE has a CVSS base score of 7.8, which sounds a little on the low side, but this one's actually somewhat concerning. The attack vector is local because it's a privilege escalation, so that makes sense. But the complexity is low, the privileges required are low, and no user interaction is required. Again, like we talked about with Smart Screen, leveraging a security product or a security mechanism is extremely helpful to actors, and it's a valuable path to get what they want to get. So, this one will have a lot of interest, and if it remains unpatched, it'll be in use very quickly.
Yeah. I mean, it's not like you can just remove Defender from your endpoints, right?
Right. Yeah, that's a pretty important one to keep. I mean, I think the only thing that keeps this from being, more on fire is that the exploit code maturity is unproven. So, the fortunate thing is there's a little bit of time with this one, but it could be rather high impact. Most likely it is by virtue of Defender scanning something that you'll get privilege escalation, which means if you can get privilege escalation as part of that parsing process, then you're also presumably not going to get marked as malicious because you can just bypass that right away as you go to system level privileges. So
right.
It's really kind of a twofer when you go after the actual AV or EDR itself, and that's why I'd be worried about it. And these are hard to do too, right? Like, part of the problem is parsers are hard. Parsers are what gets so many people, so many products in security trouble. And, Defender by its very nature has to do a lot of parsing. Like, it's just, it is inherent to its job. So, not surprised to see these kinds of vulnerabilities, but these are definitely ones to prioritize.
Well, cool. We appreciate everyone listening and hanging out with us today. We hope you enjoyed our very first iteration of Automox's Fix Tuesday, and we hope we enlightened you with some of the vulnerabilities we're thinking about and some of the things that keep us up at night.
Thanks so much, and we'll see you all in December.
See ya. Outro music. Ba-bum-bum. Yeah. All right.
It's going to be something dorky.
I know. Let me stop this.